Hey everyone, welcome to day 35, and today we'll be continuing with the Netflix clone. We'll be adding more functionality, building the slider logic, and we'll also see how to show the preview videos for each of these movies. All right, so let's start with that. Let me switch over to the code. All right, so here's what we are going to do. Let's make some styling changes. Okay, so I'll head over to index and we'll switch up the styles to the body tag, and let's get rid of this property. All right. And I also made some changes to the row logic. Okay, so earlier we were getting the image URLs and we are using the original value over here. Instead, we'll make use of a specific width, all right, which is 200, and here we are making use of aspect square to give it an aspect ratio instead. So these are the changes which I had made, which I had not covered in the previous session. So let's define a constant for the width. All right, so let's call it as card width equals 200, and here let this function accept a width which is going to be a number. All right, and here we will pass card width. All right, okay, and this needs to be w. Okay, and let's pass the width property here, and let's pass card width from here. All right, okay. Then the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll work on the logic so that we have some buttons over here. When we click on those buttons, it should automatically scroll as it happens in Netflix, right? So let's add the logic for that. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to create uh, so this is our section for the row data, right? Let's do one thing. Let's change the styling for this a bit. We need to get rid of this overflow property. All right, so now everything is scrolling like this, but what we want is that this should have a fixed width, right? So for this particular element we will say that uh, the overflow for this is going to be hidden, and instead what we will do is we'll use the translation logic here to use the transform property and use the transform function to move all of these items one by one, and this we'll use this as a window basically. All right, so what we will do now is So this is our container. Let's wrap it with another section element over here, right? And let's move this in here. Actually, never mind. So we are already styling it. So let's give this a class over here. Okay, and then here what we will do is we will add overflow as hidden for this. So now you see there is no scroll appearing over here, and we'll make this as relatively positioned. Okay, so let's make this relatively positioned. And what we will do here is that we are going to add some buttons over here. Okay, so this is the next button, and this is the previous button. Okay, so you can see these two buttons have been added. Let's style them slightly. Let's give them absolute position, and let's give this absolute position as well. All right, and this button we want to show towards the right, so we are going to say okay, this is going to stay here, but this one we want to show towards the right, so we'll say right 0. So this button now starts showing up here, and let's give this a z index. So z1, all right, so that it comes a bit to the top. And afterwards what we will do is this will take up the entire height which is available to it, and similarly we'll give the entire height to this button as well. So now they're appearing here in the center. Let's give them a background, so we'll say bg black, and we want to give them some opacity, so bg 25. So you can see that we have a slight background over here for these buttons. Okay, and similarly the same styling we want to give to the next button as well. Okay, and whenever we click on this, what we want is that this, this element should slide. So let's create some functions over here. Function on next, click, and similarly let's create a function for the previous. When we click on the previous button, and all right, so this is for that. And here what we will do is Let's put all of these inside another section. And this we are going to give it the flex class as well. So we're going to say flex and let's give a gap over here of 2. All right, and we want to say that this should have a transition on the transform property, right? Let's give it a delay of 700. And what we are trying to do here is that as we click on those buttons, okay, so as we are clicking on the buttons, we want to basically, let's, so this is the section, right, with the transition. So as we are clicking on the buttons, so we'll use the transform property and we'll translate in the x direction by a certain number. So for example, let's say 100 pixels, right? So as we're increasing this or reducing this, you can see that this is moving. Okay, let's give it a negative value, and you can see that as we are changing this, it is, sliding a bit, right? So that is the logic that we are trying to build over here. So let's come back to the code here and we'll take the reference of this element, okay, and we will specify that so we'll use the ref and we'll say slider ref. Let's create a variable with that name is equal to use ref. We'll use the use ref hook. This is HTML section element and its initial value will set as null, okay, and then whenever we're clicking on next, right, so we want to basically translate it a bit. So what we will do is we'll say section or slider ref dot current dot style dot trans translate, or rather let's use the transform property, and here we will say translate x, and we will specify that we want to translate by say 100%, okay, and we click on this and we will check over here if the slider ref dot current is defined, right? Okay, and let's wire this up with the next button. So we'll say when we click on this, we'll say on next click. All right, so I'm clicking on this next. So you can see that it, slided the that particular row by a bit, as you can see over here as well, right? Let's use a transition timing function over here. So we'll say is linear. Let's try this again. So it is doing that. Okay. Not delay, we should say duration 700. All right, let's try it now. So you can see that it is performing that effect. Okay. And similarly, let's do that for previous as well. So in case of previous, we will basically uh, translated whatever was the existing value, we'll translate that by we'll go back to the previous value. So for that purpose, let's maintain that in a variable. So we'll say const translate x set translate x equals use state, and we'll set this to 0. All right, and here we will say that whenever we are clicking on next, right, so whatever was the previous translation value, we'll subtract 100 from it. Okay, just for example, so let updated tra translate x equals translate x minus 100, and this value we will use here. And we'll say set translate x uh, and we'll pass that value here. Okay, actually instead of doing this like this, um, fine, let's do it here only. Update translate x, and similarly here also we'll do something similar, that whatever was the previous value, we'll add 100 to it, and let's update it over here. Okay, so we're clicking on this, it's translating by 100%, and let's see. So the previous button is getting lost whenever we are clicking on next, and we also need to wire it up. So we'll say on click previous click, and here we need to give it a z index so that it comes a bit towards the front. All right, and now when we're clicking on previous, it is going in that direction. So next, and then previous, but it is sliding a whole lot more than needed. So let's develop the logic for figuring out how much we need to slide. Okay, so for that, let's create a function which will give us that information. And another thing that we want to do is we want to calculate how many cards are there per card, right? So let's do that as well. So we'll say const cards per page equals use ref 0, and then let's determine the logic for calculating the cards per page. So once we have fetched all the data, right, which is available, then what we will do is we'll say use effect, and we'll say row. Whenever the row data dot length is being changed, what we want to do is we want to check if row data dot length, and we want to determine what is the actual width available. Okay, so let's go to that element. So this is the container for all of these, right? Let's do a refresh. If we inspect this, so this is the container element which basically holds all of these. So let's determine what is the width for this, and then we know that all of these cards have a width of 200, right? So let's divide it by that to figure out how many cards are going to fit in this space. Okay, so what we will do is we'll give a reference of this, and let's just call this as cards container ref, and const container ref equals use ref. This is also HTML section element, and let's give its initial value as null, and here we will check if container ref dot current. In that case what we want to do is we want to check how many what is the width of this container. So we will say container ref current dot client width, and we'll divide that by the card width, right? So that should give us uh, cards per page dot current. So this should give us the number of cards. Let's do one thing. Let's uh, round this value, and then what we will do is yeah, so this should give us the number of cards per page, and then let's create a function which will basically give us the result of how many uh, by how much we need to translate. Okay, so function get translate x value. So we'll say let translate x equals 0 initially, and we will just check if the slider element has been rendered. We'll say translate x equals cards per page dot current, and we will multiply with that with the card width. Okay, so this will give us the total width of all the cards which are there, and we will divide that by the slider ref dot current dot client width. So we are trying to calculate a percentage by which, by which we should translate. So we'll multiply the result of this by 100. So this should give us a percentage. Okay, and we will then return translate x from here, and here we will basically set this value. So get translate value. So whatever was the previous translate x, we will subtract get translate value, and here what we will do is we will add get translate value. So let's see if this logic is working, and let's click on previous. So you can see that this logic is working. Now what we want to do is we want to disable these next and previous buttons, and we also want to show icons for them. So for that we'll use a library known as Heroicons, which is provided by the Tailwind team. Okay, so let's go to the installation for this. So I'll copy this, and before that I'll share the link for this in the chat. And let's copy the installation for this, and let's install this library. All right, so it has installed all of these, and the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be importing a few of the icons which we need. So for example, we need the chevron down. Actually we need the right and left icons, right? So let's import those. Say import chevron left from headless, what is it, at the rate Heroicons React. We want to import them for the size 24, and we want to use the outline version, and we want to use the chevron left icon, and similarly here we want to use the right icon. All right, and inside these buttons let's specify those icons. And in for next let's show chevron right. Okay, let's see if those icons are showing up. Hmm, let me just cross check once. So Heroicons React, their size, the category, and the name. All right, so we need to give these a height and a width as well. Let's see what is going on. Class name, text, white, for example. Let's just try and do a hard reload for this. For some reason, it is not showing those icons. Um, okay, let's give these a width. Okay, yeah, so the width wasn't coming, that's why the icons were not showing up. And similarly, let's give it a width over here as well, width of 12. All right, so we have the next and previous icons showing up now. All right, and the next thing that we want to show is this. So if you go to the original Netflix, right, they have this pagination in indicator. If you notice over here, whenever we hover on this, right, it is showing us this indicator over here, right? And these icons only appear when we hover on them. So let's add that logic here as well. So what we will do here is that let's add some styling here. So we'll say row container, and whenever we hover on this, by default we want to say from the left it has a margin of 12, and whenever we hover over these, this has a cursor which is a pointer. So we can see that this hand symbol comes, and then what we want to do here inside where is it, index.css, we want to give a definition for the row container. So whenever we are inside the row container class, what we want to do is we want these to become visible, right? So by default, let's give them an opacity of 0. And here we will say that row container dot opacity 0. We'll say opacity theme opacity dot 100 whenever we are hovering over this element. Okay, so you can see now that why isn't it showing up opacity hyphen 0? So this has the opacity 0 class on it. And what we were trying to do is the moment we hover on this, right? Um, this should set change the opacity from 0 to 1, but somehow it's not doing that. Let's just check once again. So these are the buttons, and let's try and hover on this. Row container. Okay, there's a type over here, opacity 0. All right, so now it is showing up, right? And we want to do what we want to do is we want to show some indicators over here, right? So let's work on that logic. Let's go to the content rows, and here what we will do is we'll add a unordered list, and let's create a, and what we will do is we'll also calculate now how many pages we are going to show, right? How many pages are going to come in each of the uh, uh, pages. I mean, how many pages, how many indicators we need to show, right? So let's determine the logic for that as well. So let's create a variable for that. Use state pages count. So initially they are 0, and then here what we will do is we'll say pages, not here, sorry, here, set pages count. So that will be calculated by dividing the total number of elements, that is row data dot length. We will divide that by cards per page dot current, and what we will do is we'll say mat dot seal. All right, so this should give us how many pages are there for each row, and we'll use that value to determine how many indicators to show. So we will say pages array. We'll create an array with the pages count, and we'll fill those pages, we'll fill that array with zeros, and then we will say map, and we will return, this will give us a page, and we will basically return a li. The key is nothing but the page, and let's give these some width. So let's give it a width of say 3 and a height of 2 pixels, and let's give these a background as well. So we'll say bg gray 100, no, 600. All right, so it is appearing over here. and let's uh, give, make this flex, and let's give a gap of say 1. So you can see that these three have come over here, and let's give some space between these elements. So we'll say margin bottom of 4. Let's make this 2. So you can see we have these 3 dots, right? We have 3 pages over here basically. And what we want to do is, and we will say flex justify end. So these are coming over here, and let's give some padding towards the right, say 4, and let's align the items. So we'll say items center. So you can see these 3 indicators are appearing over here. All right. And now what we want to do is, as we are sliding, the active page should have a different background color. So let's create a variable to keep track of the active page. So const current page set current page equals use state. Okay. And then what we want to do is, we want to give certain classes based on the current page. So here what we will check is if current page equals this page, right? In that case, we will give it a bg gray of 100. Otherwise, we will give it this class. Let's use index here, and let's check if index so now you can see, since we are at page number 0, this is having this white bar. And what we want to do is, whenever we click on next, right, we want to move on to the next one. So let's add the logic for that over here. On next click, set current page plus 1. So this part is working. All right. And similarly, we want to do something similar over here as well. So here we'll say current page -1. And this slider also appears whenever we hover on this, right? So let's do that part as well. So now you can see that whenever we're hovering over this, only then the slider and uh, arrows appear. And let's use some transition over here. So transition, opacity, duration, say 300, and we will say ease in. Okay, let's copy this and paste it here as well as here. So now you can see that it appears after a slight delay. And the other thing that we want to do is when we're at the end of the page, right? We want to we want to hide the next button, and when we're at the beginning, we want to hide the previous button. Otherwise, we might get issues like these. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll say const disable previous equals, we'll check whether current page equals 0, right? That is when we want to disable the previous button, and disable next equals, for that we will check whenever current page is whenever current page plus 1 equals uh, pages count. Okay, and what we will do is here we will check disable previous. If not disable previous, then we show this button. Otherwise we say null, and we'll do something similar here as well. When not whenever we want to, whenever disable next is false, we want to show the button. Otherwise we want to show null. All right, so now you can see we do not see the previous button, only the next button is being shown. Let's click on next, and now we can see the previous button is showing up. And let's go to the end, and now you can see the previous button has gone, right? And now, I mean, the next button has gone, and so this logic is working fine. All right. Uh, the other thing that we want to do is so there's a question in the chat. Do I need to know all of this course to be front-end developer? It depends. I don't know what are the topics that you are aware of, because we started from the scratch, and now we towards the end of the boot camp. So if you're familiar with React, Tailwind UI, then you can watch this. You can start from the first part of the Netflix clone. Otherwise, I recommend that you start from the part where you are not comfortable with or not familiar with. So all of the there's a playlist available. You can go to the playlist sections, check out the front end playlist, and there you will have all of the videos, all of the sessions that we have had so far. All right. Okay. Um, the other thing that we'll do is we'll move this into its own component. So let's copy this and let's go to components, and we want to create a component for page indicator.tsx. And here we will say page indicator. This is going to return a UL. And basically it will need the pages count and the current page over here. And let's create define props for that. So pages count is a number and current page is also a number. Okay, and over here we'll replace this with the page indicator component. So this will have the pages count and similarly current page equals current page. All right, and if we want to give some styling information, right? So by default it will have uh, this kind these all of these styles, and this will accept a, what do you say, class name prop as well. This is going to be a string, and here we will say that whatever were the existing classes, and after that we will add the class that this needs. Okay, so we will say dollar class name, and here we will say class name, and we will say margin bottom 4, like this. So now you can see we have the pages indicator as well, and we had explicitly added all of this logic, right? What if somebody doesn't need this part? So let's move that logic, move all of those classes here. Okay, so that this becomes a completely reusable component, right? Okay, and similarly let's create a separate component for this as well, for displaying all of the movies. So let's create a component, let's call it as movie card.tsx, and let's take this. It's going to return a movie card, And let's define the props for this. So this is going to accept a poster path, which is going to be a string, ID, which is going to be a number, and this is of movie card prop type. And let's do one more thing. We might need this functionality across different places. So let's move this inside its own utility function. I mean, let's move it inside its own file. So we'll take this function from here, and let's go to the common and let's create a file known as utils.ts. Let's add this function over here and we'll say export, and give this, we'll import this function from here, and let's copy this. Let's say const card width equals 200, and this needs a title prop as well. Let's say title, which is going to be a string, and here we'll just spread all the rows. Sorry, we'll spread the row property, so it will pick up the properties which it needs. And here let's give this a key which is equal to row dot id. All right, so we have moved the card into its own component. Now what we want to do is the moment we come over this card, we want to show a preview of its video, right? So let's use a control known as React YouTube. Using this component, we can play YouTube videos. Okay, so I'll install this there. The usage is somewhat like this, that you have this component, you give it a video ID, which is the video ID associated with which is available on YouTube. There is other functionality available over here as well. So you can see over here, this is the usage, right? You give some video ID, you give some options. Whenever this player is ready, you can do something. And these are the options that you can pass. So let's work on that functionality now. And another thing that we want to do is, if you look at the original Netflix, it kind of opens up a, what do you say, pop over here, pop over or a modal dialog. So let's try and achieve that functionality. So for that, we'll use Headless UI, which is a set of components provided by the Tailwind UI team. And we'll try and use this dialog component. So what we will do is we'll open this dialog whenever the whenever we hover over a particular movie card, and then we'll try and show the uh, show the video associated with that. Okay. All right. So let's install this. npm add headless UI React. All right, so it has installed that, and let's create a component which will open the dialog for us. So let's call that as uh, modal.tsx. Okay, so let's create the component modal, and what we will do is we'll see if there is any example available over here. So there is this example available with transitions. Uh, let's copy the code for this and paste it here. Let's call this as modal and make some changes to this. Actually, let's use this one. And so this is going to accept some props. So is open, and we will, this is already being passed. Let's get rid of this. Let's pass the on close here, and here we want to show the title, so let's accept a title prop as well. And here we will be showing the contents. So let's, this will get a children prop. All right, let's define the type for this. So is open is boolean, then on close is a function which is expecting a value and which is boolean, and it is going to return nothing. And children is react dot react element modal props, and title can be string or it can be a react. Okay, so let's get rid of the comments. All right. Now, what we want to do is let's test this out. Let's go inside the movie card and here we want to show the modal export default. So this is expecting a title which is the will pass the same title as that of the movie, and it needs children. So what we will do is we will uh, add some content over here. This is the content. All right, then is open. Let's create a use state is open. Initially it's not open. And on close, this expecting a value which is boolean, and we'll say set is open to false, or whatever is the value that we're getting from here. And let's assign on close to this. And what we want to do is whenever this component is being rendered, right, so we'll have use effect. Whenever it is mounted for the first time, we want to listen to we want to get a reference of this, and we want to determine whenever the mouse is entering this, we want to show this dialog. Okay, so we'll say const movie card ref equals use ref. This is HTML section element, and by default it is null, and we'll give a reference of this movie card ref. And what we will do is movie card ref dot current dot add event listener, and we want to listen to the mouse enter event function on mouse enter. This is going to be a mouse event on mouse enter. Okay, this needs to be of this type, so let's change this. Um, Mouse enter types of event and EV are incompatible. What? Okay, we'll get back to this. What sort of event this needs to be? Um, for now, I'll just make it as any. Okay, and we'll come back to the type for this. And whenever we are cleaning up, in that case also we want to say movie card ref dot current dot remove event listener mouse enter and on mouse and here what we will do is whenever the mouse enters we want to say is open, we'll set it to true. Sorry, set is open to true. Encounter two children with the same key. Okay, so we'll look at that part. Where is it? We'll use a combination of row ID as well as the index here. Okay, we'll come back to this and fix this. Let's see if the logic that we have written, if that is working correctly. So you can see something is happening. Let's come to the modal. So for the title, right? Dialog title, let's give some classes over here. We'll say text large, and we want to use text white, and similarly for the panel we will say bg dark. Okay, let's inspect what is going on. Okay, give me a second. Let's take the example from here and just check once whether we have done something wrong or all right. Now the modal is showing up, and instead of showing this, we want to show the title here, and instead of this, we want to display the children that we have. All right, so we're seeing this content, right? So the moment we, for example, we hover over this, it's showing the title as well. This is the content. So this part is working. Now, instead of showing this, we'll show the YouTube player. Okay, so let's check. Let's install the React YouTube package. All right, and let's come inside the movie card, and here we'll show the YouTube element. Let's give this video ID. Let's come over here. And let's pick a video from here. So let's pick the previous video, and this is the video ID. Let's assign that over here. So you can see that this video is showing up here, right? Okay. And this is playing it over here as well. Let's style this a bit. So we want to specify some options. So PTS, and here we'll say this takes up a width, say 450, And there's another property known as player vars. Here we will say auto play one plays inline one, and we don't want to show the controls, so we'll say controls as 0. And let's go inside the modal. Okay, so you can see that it is showing up the title and then the video is showing up over here, right? Now what we want to do is so whenever we are clicking outside, right, that dialog is closing. What we will try and do is whenever we move our mouse outside this element, right? So basically this element, so let's go inside the modal. And let's search for the element which has this class, which is the dialog panel. Let's get a reference of this. All right, and here we will say that use effect where is it? And we'll also store a reference of this. So const panel ref equals use ref. Initially it is null, and we want to check panel ref dot current dot add. This is basically of this type. Dot current dot add. All right, I think that's not going to let us do for that. Let's get a reference of this instead. Panel ref, and this is basically a HTML element, and we'll say dot add event listener. We want to listen to the mouse mouse leave. Let's just check once. Mouse leave event. So whenever it moves, when the cursor of the pointing element is moved out, okay. When this happens, function on mouse leave will get the event, and let's pass it over here on mouse leave. We don't need the event as of now. Let's just log to the console. Mouse leave happened. All right, let's come here. So the dialog opened. Let's log this in the console. Parent, sorry, panel ref current. Okay, so here we will, let's do one thing. Let's say panel ref current. Whenever the value for this changes, and here we will check if panel ref dot current. When that happens, we want to add this event listener. Okay. All right. For some reason, it's not firing. Let's come back to that a bit later on. But what we will do is, in the meantime, we'll try and show the correct video. Okay. So let's go to TM developer TMDB API, and we want to basically get the videos, right? So let's search for videos. So this basically needs a movie ID to get the video, and let's take a look at this. So here is an example. All right, and let's click on try it out. So the URL for this is movie movie ID videos, and yeah, let's copy this. Let's go to the file which has all the endpoints, and we'll say video So this is going to need the movie ID, and this is expecting a language as well, but we leave the language out. And let's make a call over here that when the mouse enters, right, at that point of time, based on the ID, we get the information. So we will say function fetch video info, and we'll say fetch request. We'll give it endpoint dot movie video, and we'll say dot replace. We want to replace this particular thing um, with the movie ID, right? Which is this one. And let's await const response equals await. Let's do one thing. Let's try this example out. So let's come here. For now, I'll give this as any, since this is let's log this to the console. Let's do a refresh, and we need to call this, right? So when the mouse enters, we will say fetch video info, and let's go into, where is it? So we are getting the response over here. Results. Let's copy this All right, and let's go to JSON hero, and we'll create a type for this. Let's copy the schema. JSON schema to TypeScript. Okay, let's copy this and let's come here. Let's create a type for this. Export type movie video result equals, and this is going to accept a type which is T, and this type will pass here, and export type movie video info equals, so this is the type, and then now we can specify that this is going to be movie video result, and this is going to be of movie video info array, right? All right, and once we have the response available, so we want to return, let's take a look at the JSON. So this is YouTube, and this is, yeah, we'll just pick one which is yeah, we'll just pick one from here, whichever is the first one which has the site as YouTube. Okay, so return response dot results dot filter result dot what was it, site equals YouTube. We'll do site dot to lowercase equals YouTube. All right, so we'll await this. And here we'll say let's store this in a state const video info comma set video info equals use state, and initially let's set this to null, and here we will say set video info, and this is of type movie video info. And here we'll say that const video info equals fetch video info. And we will set this here. And here we will say video info dot id. Let's see if this is working now. All right, let's try and see the response that we got. So we have the video info, the ID is this. Okay, so we should use the key property, not the ID property. So we'll say dot key over here. And now you can see that it is playing the trailer of the movie which we had opened. So this video is unavailable. So this one is there. All right. And let's see if it's showing the trailer for this. So it is showing the some sort of preview over here, right? And I think we'll stop here, and in the next sessions we'll try and figure out how to close the dialog and how to position this dialog and give it a functionality which is somewhat similar to this. So we'll work on that logic in the upcoming session. All right. So in case you guys have any doubts, let's address those in the Devsnest Discord voice channel. Okay. So this is it for this session. I'll see you guys in the next session on Monday. Until then, take care and have a happy weekend.